You are standing in your kitchen, slicing vegetables for dinner, when the knife slips. It is not a deep cut, but it is bleeding, and it stings. Without even thinking, you walk over to the bathroom cabinet. You grab a bottle of antiseptic wince as it hits the raw tissue and slap on an adhesive bandage. In less than 60 seconds, you have neutralized a threat that, for most of human history, could have been a death sentence. We take this casual invincibility for granted, but strip away the linoleum floors, the running water, and the global pharmaceutical supply chain. Drop yourself onto the dusty, wind-scoured savanna of the Pleistocene epoch, or into the freezing caves of Ice Age Europe. You are holding a sharpened flint hand axe, and it just slipped. A piece of your leg is now laid open to a world teeming with microscopic predators. There is no pharmacy. There is no doctor. There is only you, your tribe, and the raw, untamed wilderness. This brings us to a question that rarely gets asked in our sanitized modern world. How did ancient humans clean, treat, and survive wounds before the invention of formal medicine? The lazy answer is that they just had stronger immune systems, or that the weak simply died off. But evolutionary biology and archaeology tell a vastly different, much more fascinating story. The non-obvious answer is that our ancestors were not just passive victims of nature waiting for antibiotics to be discovered. They were active experimental problem solvers, master botanists, intuitive chemists, and deeply empathetic caregivers. Long before the first medical textbooks were etched into clay tablets, early humans had already compiled a massive, undocumented pharmacopeia. To understand their genius, we first have to understand the stakes. In the ancient world, the initial trauma of a cut, a burn, or an animal bite was rarely what killed you. The real assassin was infection, with bacteria like Staphylococcus living on the skin, in the soil, and in the mouths of predators. A simple scratch from a thorn could lead to sepsis and a painful death in a matter of days. The margin for error was essentially zero. Without a sterile environment, every interaction with the natural world carried a hidden biological tax. Survival required immediate, effective intervention. And the very first line of defense was something so fundamental we barely register it as a medical treatment, which is water. The instinct to wash a wound is deeply hard-coded into our primate brains. Ancient humans did the exact same thing. Seeking out clear, fast-moving streams, they flushed out dirt, debris, and the initial influx of environmental bacteria. But water was only the beginning, and they carried their own saliva at all times. While we view spitting on a wound as unsanitary, saliva contains beneficial compounds. Lysozyme breaks down cell walls, and tissue factor helps the blood clot. Licking a scraped knee was not ignorance. It was a sound application of medicine. What happened when the wound was too large or water was too far? They turned to the air, burning specific woods and resins in their hearths. Smoke is a powerful agent, and phenols in wood smoke can sterilize the area. Keeping a wound in the smoke created a microclimate that inhibited bacterial growth. It also kept away biting insects that carried their own deadly pathogens. The hearth was not just a place to cook. It was a sanitized recovery ward. Once the wound was cleaned, it needed to be sealed by our ancestors. They looked to their local ecology and found one powerful medicine: honey. Long before we understood osmosis, early humans knew honey kept wounds from festering. Modern science has since validated this, as honey is highly hygroscopic. It draws moisture out of the environment and dehydrates bacterial cells to kill them. As it interacts with body fluids, enzymes produce low levels of hydrogen peroxide. This provides a continuous and slow-release antiseptic effect for the injury. Whether harvested from African rift valleys or the dense forests of Europe, this sweet and sticky substance was a prehistoric super glue for survival. It sealed out the world while actively hunting down every lingering microbe. Honey washes away in the rain, and it can attract scavengers. For a durable, waterproof seal, ancient humans turned to the trees. Plant resins, saps, and tars were the ancient equivalents of liquid stitches. Early humans harvested resins from conifers, heating them to make them pliable. They pressed the resin directly over a cut for a makeshift seal. Archaeological evidence shows Neanderthals were distilling birch tar long ago. It was a complex process requiring precise temperature control for thousands of years. While used for hafting stone tools, the substance surely reached human skin. Pine resin contains compounds like pinene, which have documented antibacterial properties. By sealing a wound with pitch, they created a barrier against dirt. The chemical properties of the resin fought off invisible invaders. Not all wounds were clean cuts from sharp, predictable stones. Many were blunt force traumas, deep punctures, or nasty, lingering burns. For these, the earth itself provided a surprisingly effective remedy. The use of medicinal clays and mud spans every inhabited continent. This practice was just as vital topically as it was when ingested. Indigenous groups across the globe independently discovered the drawing power of earth. Certain clays rich in smectite minerals have a unique crystalline structure. They absorb massive amounts of water and toxins, like a dry sponge. When applied as a poultice, the clay draws out fluids and reduces inflammation. As the clay dries, it forms a hard shell, acting as a primitive cast. It immobilizes the tissue, allowing natural healing processes to finally take over. But a poultice, or a resin seal, needs to be held in place. This brings us to the tedious, necessary art of bandaging. We think of bandages as modern, but wrapping a wound is incredibly ancient. Early humans used broad leaves, strips of animal, hide, and plant fibers. We have physical evidence of this from Otzi the Iceman in the Alps. His body, dating back to 3300 BCE, was found with a medical kit. He carried leather strips containing fragments of the antibiotic birch polypore fungus. He also had wounds wrapped in bandages made from woven grass and moss. Sphagnum moss is absorbent and acidic, making it an incredible natural dressing. It wicks away fluids while keeping a hostile environment for bacteria. Now, whenever people imagine ancient wound care, pop culture jumps to one dramatic image. We picture a warrior biting down on a leather strap while a red-hot iron is pressed into a wound. But from a physiological standpoint, this Hollywood trope is largely a myth. Cauterization destroys massive amounts of healthy tissue, creating a layer of dead flesh. It is actually a perfect breeding ground for anaerobic bacteria, which causes gangrene. While heat was used in desperate emergencies, it was not the standard of care. Ancient healers were far too observant to use a method that led to rotting limbs. They understood that preserving living tissue was just as important as stopping the bleeding. Instead of burning flesh, they likely used heat to sterilize their tools, warming obsidian blades in the fire before using them to lance boils. This brings us to a realization about ancient medicine and a reversal of how we view evolution. We have spent all this time talking about water, honey, resin, and clay. But the most effective medicine our ancestors possessed was not a plant or a chemical. It was each other. The true secret to surviving a wound was social care. If you were alone on the savannah with a broken femur, no resin was going to save you. You would die of thirst or exposure long before the infection took you. Survival required a social safety net. In primatology, there is a concept called allogrooming, where individuals pick parasites from each other. In early hominids, this evolutionary trait scaled up into deliberate wound tending. When a member of the tribe was injured, the group did not leave them behind. They cleaned their wounds, chewed their food, and protected them. We see the physical proof of this radical empathy in the fossil record. Take the famous Neanderthal specimen known as Shanidar 1, discovered in a cave in Iraq. Shanidar 1 suffered a crushing blow to his head, leaving him blind and with a withered arm. Yet, his bones show that he survived for years after these catastrophic injuries. He could not have hunted or foraged effectively on his own. He survived because his community cared for him, day in and day out. This level of social cohesion was the ultimate evolutionary adaptation. The plants and resins were just tools. The real mechanism of survival was the deep, unbreakable bonds of the tribe. Wound care was a communal activity, a ritual of empathy that reinforced social ties. It ensured the survival of the group's collective knowledge. The elder who knew which moss stopped bleeding, the forager who knew where bees hid honey, the strong hunter who carried the injured back. This network of care was the true pharmacy. It was an experimental trial and error process built over hundreds of thousands of years, paid for in the pain of countless individuals, but resulting in a mastery of nature. So next time you peel the wrapper off a sterile bandage or complain about the sting, take a moment to look back down the impossibly long corridor of human history. You are the beneficiary of 1 million scraped knees and 1 million animal bites, 1 million quiet acts of compassion around a flickering campfire. The antibiotics in your cabinet are just the modern refinement of the pine pitch, but the instinct to wash the wound, to seal it, and help the person who is hurting. That is not just a medical protocol, that is the core of what makes us human. We carry their resilience in our DNA and their capacity for care in our hearts. It is the oldest medicine we have, and it kept us alive since the dawn of our species.